Module 10. The Future of Activism and Social Movements in a Globalized World. 1. Globalization and the New Terrain of Activism. Globalization has compressed space and time, making activism no longer confined to local boundaries. Social movements in Nigeria, Hong Kong, Chile, or Sudan can inspire solidarity protests in London, New York, or Johannesburg within hours. However, globalization also concentrates power in global corporations, supranational institutions, and networks of elites, which sometimes makes resistance more difficult. Opportunities: access to global solidarity, transnational funding, real-time information exchange. Threats: cultural homogenization, resource exploitation by global capital, authoritarian governments learning repressive tactics from each other. Global activism now must balance between local rootedness, working with community struggles, and global resonance, amplifying issues on international platforms. 2. Digital and technological futures. The digital revolution is the most significant development shaping modern and future activism. Technology brings both tools for liberation and tools for control. Positive potentials: social media campaigns that go viral, for example, Faisans, #SARS, #Black Lives Matter, #MeToo. Blockchain technology for transparent funding of grassroots organizations. AI-powered data analysis to predict protest turnout or map repression patterns. Virtual reality activism for immersive storytelling. Challenges and risks: state surveillance through AI-driven facial recognition. Internet shutdowns during protests. Misinformation and digital propaganda campaigns. Clicktivism replacing sustained organizing. Future activism will depend heavily on cybersecurity literacy, digital strategy, and creative technology use to outmaneuver digital authoritarianism. 3. Climate change and ecological activism. The defining crisis of the 21st century is climate change. Rising sea levels, extreme heat, food insecurity, and forced migration are producing climate refugees, eco-conflicts, and demands for radical transformation of industrial society. Emerging movements: Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future, Indigenous Land Defenders, anti-pipeline campaigns. Future direction: ecological activism will likely become the epicenter of global civil disobedience as states and corporations struggle to balance economic growth with planetary survival. Civil disobedience dimension: expect more disruptive tactics such as road blockades, airport shutdowns, and strikes against polluting industries. Climate activism will transform into not just an issue, but the framework for all activism, as ecological collapse intersects with poverty, migration, gender, and racial justice. 4. Shifting state-citizen relations. In the future, the contest between activists and governments will intensify. Authoritarian regimes are growing more sophisticated in repression, using digital surveillance, criminalizing dissent, controlling the judiciary, and weaponizing nationalism against foreign-funded activists. However, democratic states are not exempt. Many liberal democracies deploy riot police, anti-protest laws, and mass surveillance in the name of security. Activists of the future will face increasing criminalization of civil disobedience, making strategic planning and international alliances essential. The struggle will be about who controls the narrative: activists framing protests as legitimate expressions of justice versus states portraying them as threats to security. 5. Economic inequality and class-based movements. Global capitalism has created billionaires with more wealth than entire nations while leaving billions in precarity. The growing wealth gap will be a driver of future social movements: worker strikes against exploitative corporations, mass resistance against austerity policies, movements for universal basic income and debt cancellation, anti-capitalist activism demanding systemic restructuring. Civil disobedience will increasingly target economic infrastructures, shutting down stock exchanges, occupying banks, blocking supply chains, and hacking financial systems. 6. Intersectionality and inclusive futures. Future activism will continue embracing intersectionality, recognizing how struggles overlap: gender, race, class, sexuality, disability, environment, and migration. Activism led by women, LGBTQ+ persons, and indigenous communities will play central roles. Movements will emphasize solidarity across struggles rather than siloed activism. Civil disobedience tactics will reflect inclusive, decentralized leadership models. 7. The Global South as a center of future activism. Historically, the Global North dominated activist narratives. In the future, the Global South, Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, will increasingly shape global activism given their youthful populations, histories of colonial resistance, and exposure to acute crises like climate change and poverty. Nigeria's #NZARS, Sudan's pro-democracy movement, and Chile's constitutional protests foreshadow how the global south will set the tone of global resistance. 8. The role of youth and generational shifts. Future activism will be youth-driven, given that young people are digitally native, demographically dominant, and often the most impacted by systemic failures. Universities will remain hotbeds of protest. TikTok, Instagram, and emerging platforms will shape mobilization. Younger generations see activism not as optional, but as necessary survival politics. 9. Ethics, morality, and the radicalization debate. The future will force activists to confront the moral boundaries of resistance. Will activists remain committed to nonviolence, or will frustration push towards militancy? How will activists justify disruptive tactics like sabotaging oil infrastructure or hacking financial systems? Will the principle of greater good outweigh legal prohibitions? These ethical debates will define whether movements remain broadly legitimate or risk delegitimization. 10. Imagining the future of social movements. Optimistic future. Global solidarity, strengthened democratic norms, climate justice, digital empowerment, and systemic transformation. Pessimistic future. Mass surveillance, authoritarian repression, environmental collapse, corporate domination, and fragmented resistance. Most likely, a contested hybrid future where activism and repression co-evolve, with constant battles over legitimacy, power, and survival. Conclusion. Module 10 encapsulates the forward-looking vision of activism, civil disobedience, and social movements. It highlights the global, technological, ecological, and generational dynamics shaping the struggles of tomorrow. You must understand that activism's future is not predetermined. It depends on collective imagination, courage, innovation, and solidarity in the face of systemic challenges. This is not just about predicting the future, it is about preparing activists to shape it deliberately. 6. The future of activism in a globalized, technological world. Looking ahead, activism will increasingly be shaped by hybrid strategies that combine digital advocacy with grassroots, on-the-ground mobilization. Blockchain technology, decentralized organizing, and artificial intelligence may play transformative roles. Movements will need to navigate the tension between visibility and vulnerability, ensuring digital tools enhance rather than replace collective action. This module concludes that globalization and technology are not merely tools, but transformative forces reshaping the nature of activism itself, enabling activists to be more interconnected, adaptive, and resilient than ever before.